Tonight, we travel to the Korean peninsula nearly 1,000 years ago, to a world shaped by patience, fire, and quiet discipline. Imagine mist rising over low green hills. Pine forests stand still in the early morning light. A thin ribbon of smoke curls into the sky from a long climbing kiln built into a slope. The air carries the faint scent of wood resin and damp clay. This is the world of the Goryeo kingdom. A place where refined Celadon pottery, soft green, luminous, almost translucent, would become one of the most admired ceramics in the medieval world. Bowls that seemed to hold moonlight. Vases that reflected water. Glaze so delicate it appeared almost alive. But tonight, we are not beginning in a royal banquet hall. We are not beginning in the court of scholars. We are beginning with you. You are a potter. Your hands are rough with clay. Your back aches from bending. Your livelihood depends on temperature, timing, and the unpredictable temperament of fire. So settle in. Breathe slowly. Let the rhythm of the wheel begin to turn. Imagine yourself waking before dawn in a modest village near the kilns of Goryeo Korea. The air is cool. Your bedding is thin but serviceable. Outside, the world is still gray with early light. A rooster calls somewhere in the distance. The day has already begun. You step outside and the scent of wet earth greets you. Clay must be prepared before the sun rises too high. Pottery in the Goryeo era was not romantic artistry. It was repetition, discipline, precision shaped by habit. You kneel beside a trough where clay has been soaking overnight. The material must be kneaded, again and again, until air pockets disappear. If even a small bubble remains, the vessel could crack in the kiln. Weeks of work could collapse silently in the heat. Your fingers press and fold. Press and fold. The rhythm becomes meditative. Clay cool against your palms. Grit against your knuckles. A steady breathing in and out. You move to the wheel. It is simple. Wooden. Powered by foot. You press down and begin the circular motion. The wheel spins not quickly but steadily. The clay mound centers under your hands. If it wobbles, the vessel will be uneven. If it collapses, you begin again. Imagine your thumbs pressing into the center. The walls rise slowly. Too thin and the bowl will warp. Too thick and it will look clumsy. The proportions must feel balanced, almost instinctive. You make dozens of these each week. Bowls for rice, cups for tea, bottles for oil, incense burners for temples. Most will never bear your name. Goryeo Celadon is admired centuries later for its elegant simplicity. But in this moment it is labor. Constant shaping. Constant correction. By mid-morning the sun has warmed the yard. Unfired vessels line wooden boards in neat rows. They must dry carefully, not too quickly, not too slowly. A sudden gust of wind can create uneven drying and cause hairline cracks invisible until it is too late. You watch the sky more than you watch the road. Cloud cover matters. Humidity matters. Everything matters. Later, glaze preparation begins. The signature Celadon glaze, soft jade green, comes from a mixture that includes iron oxide in precise proportions. Too much iron and the glaze turns muddy. Too little and it loses its depth. You dip the dried vessels carefully. The glaze coats them in a dull, chalky layer. It does not yet shine. It looks unremarkable, almost lifeless. The transformation will happen in the kiln. And that transformation is not entirely in your control. By afternoon, the kiln must be loaded. Climbing kilns, long, sloping structures built along hillsides, can fire thousands of pieces at once. Stacked carefully, separated by kiln furniture, arranged so flames circulate evenly. You slide the final bowl into place. Then the fire begins. Wood is fed steadily into the firebox. Pine logs crackle. Heat builds gradually. Too fast and everything shatters. Too slow and the glaze will not mature properly. The firing can last days. You do not sleep well during this time. You take shifts tending the flames. Sweat beads on your brow. Smoke clings to your clothing. Sparks drift upward into the night sky. Inside the kiln, temperatures climb to over 1,200 degrees Celsius. The clay transforms. The glaze melts. The iron reacts with oxygen in subtle ways that determine the final shade: olive, sea green, pale jade. You cannot see it happening. You can only listen. The kiln speaks in subtle sounds, small pings as vessels settle. Occasional cracks that tighten your chest. The low roar of fire breathing through vents. When at last the kiln cools, days later, comes the moment of truth. You open the chamber slowly. And sometimes the disappointment is immediate. A bowl warped slightly to one side. A glaze pooled unevenly. A hairline crack tracing across the surface like a thin river. Weeks of work undone quietly. Other times the results are breathtaking. A vase emerges luminous, its surface smooth as still water. Inlaid designs, cranes, clouds, lotus petals, appear beneath the glaze as if suspended in mist. You feel pride, but you do not celebrate loudly. Tomorrow you begin again. Payment depends on output, on quality, on meeting quotas set by local officials or merchants supplying the court. Your hands remain stained with clay. Your posture bends gradually over years. Winter brings frozen fingers. Summer brings oppressive heat near the kiln. And yet there is rhythm. Clay wheel, glaze, fire. Clay wheel, glaze, fire. The repetition becomes your world. You hear distant stories of scholars in the capital, of court ceremonies, of royal banquets where your Celadon bowls might sit before nobles. But you rarely see those places. Your life is anchored to earth and flame. The beauty others admire is born from your endurance. And as the kiln smoke thins into evening air, we begin to step away from the potter's yard. From hands shaped by labor, to a ruler whose reforms would shape the intellectual life of Korea for generations. When you are ready, we will move to the life of a king who believed in knowledge as power. As the kiln smoke drifts into the quiet hills and the potter's day settles into evening, we gently shift our attention northward, toward the capital. From earth and fire to ink and reform. Several generations after the height of Goryeo Celadon, the Korean peninsula would enter a new era under the Joseon Dynasty. And within that era emerged a ruler whose influence still lingers in daily life even now, Sejong the Great. But tonight, we do not begin with monuments or praise. We begin with a young prince. Imagine a quiet boy inside palace walls. He is not the eldest son, not the obvious heir. His days are filled not with military drills but with books, Confucian classics, poetry, treatises on governance. The palace corridors are long and hushed. Silk robes whisper softly against polished floors. Lantern light flickers gently in the evenings as he reads. Joseon society valued hierarchy. The eldest son typically inherited power. Yet Sejong's father, King Taejong, recognized something unusual in this third son. Intellectual steadiness, patience, curiosity without arrogance. Becoming king, however, was not simple. Sejong's rise required the voluntary abdication of his older brothers, an arrangement shaped by careful political negotiation. Even in a structured Confucian society, ambition and tension lived quietly beneath the surface. When Sejong ascended the throne in 1418, he did not rule through spectacle. He ruled through listening. Imagine the royal court chamber. High ceilings, painted beams, officials kneeling in orderly rows, scrolls unfurled carefully, discussions unfolding not in shouts but in measured tones. Sejong's reforms were not dramatic bursts of change. They were methodical. One of his most lasting achievements was the creation of Hangul, the Korean alphabet. Before Hangul, literacy in Korea required mastery of classical Chinese characters. A system elegant but complex, accessible primarily to elite scholars. For commoners, reading and writing were distant skills, guarded by years of study. Sejong saw this as a limitation. He convened scholars within the Hall of Worthies, a royal research institute. Together, they designed an alphabet that mirrored the shapes of the mouth and tongue when forming sounds. Logical, systematic, learnable. Imagine the quiet moment when the new letters were first introduced. Ink drying on fresh paper. Scholars debating their simplicity. Conservative officials raising cautious objections, fearful that broad literacy might disrupt social order. Sejong remained calm. He believed knowledge strengthened the state. This decision was revolutionary, though expressed in gentle language. Over time, Hangul would empower farmers, merchants, women, and artisans to record thoughts, letters, and daily transactions. Even potters, even miners, even ordinary villagers. But Sejong's reforms extended beyond language. He commissioned astronomical instruments to improve calendars, developed rain gauges to measure agricultural patterns, encouraged advancements in printing technology. Imagine court officials carefully measuring rainfall in bronze instruments, record-keeping growing more precise, agriculture becoming slightly more predictable. These changes seem small, quiet, but small improvements ripple outward. Better calendars meant more accurate planting seasons, more consistent harvests, greater stability for rural communities. Sejong also reformed taxation systems to make them more equitable, seeking feedback from provincial populations before implementing changes. A rare gesture of consultation in a rigidly hierarchical world. Still, his reign was not without tension. Border conflicts with northern tribes required defensive campaigns. Legal codes were revised. Political factions formed quietly within court walls. Power, even when exercised gently, carries weight. And yet Sejong's leadership style remained measured. Imagine him late at night, reviewing reports by lamplight. The palace silent except for the soft crackle of oil and ceramic lamps. The world outside dark and still. His reforms strengthened central authority while promoting scholarship and cultural refinement. The same society that demanded discipline from potters and farmers also cultivated scholars, astronomers, linguists. And through Sejong's policies, knowledge itself became a tool of governance. In time, his health declined. Years of intense study and administrative work strained his body. But the systems he created endured. Hangul, in particular, became a quiet revolution, gradually spreading literacy far beyond elite circles. And as we let the image of a thoughtful king fade into stillness, we move gently toward a day when political order would be tested by the clash of armies. From scholarship and reform, to a battlefield that would determine the future of the peninsula. The kiln fires dim. The scholar's ink dries. And now, across the northern horizon, a different kind of smoke appears. In the early 13th century, long before the reign of King Sejong, Korea faced a force unlike any it had encountered before, the advancing armies of the Mongol Empire. At that time, the peninsula was ruled by the Goryeo Dynasty. Court officials debated policy in calm halls. Monks copied sutras in mountain temples. Farmers bent over paddies. Potters shaped Celadon. Life moved with familiar rhythms. But beyond the borders, the empire forged by Genghis Khan was expanding across Eurasia with astonishing speed. Nomadic cavalry, disciplined and highly mobile, moved like shifting wind across steppe and desert. Eventually, that wind reached Korea. Imagine the first rumors. Travelers whispering of cities far to the west brought low. Caravans delayed. Trade disrupted. Letters arriving with anxious reports. In 1231, Mongol forces crossed into Goryeo territory. The invasions would not be a single dramatic clash. They would stretch across decades, waves of campaign, negotiation, withdrawal, and return. For villagers, the experience was not a grand narrative. There was uncertainty. You might be tending crops when distant smoke rises on the horizon. You might hear hoofbeats days before soldiers appear. The fear is not loud. It is slow, spreading like a chill through the body. The Goryeo court chose an unusual strategy. Rather than confront the Mongols directly in open battle, where cavalry dominance would be decisive, the royal court relocated to Ganghwa Island, an easily defensible location surrounded by tidal flats. Imagine officials hurriedly packing scrolls, royal seals, and ceremonial objects. Ships crossing gray water under heavy skies. The capital moved from mainland soil to an island refuge. From there, resistance continued. Fortresses held out in mountain regions. Naval units harassed Mongol supply lines. Local militias formed in villages. The invasions were destructive. Agricultural land was disrupted. Populations were displaced. Fortified monasteries were sometimes targeted, their sacred spaces becoming unintended battlegrounds. Yet through it all, daily life did not entirely stop. Potters continued to work when possible. Farmers replanted fields after raids passed. Monks resumed chanting after danger receded. The invasions unfolded not as constant chaos but as recurring waves. After several campaigns, Goryeo eventually agreed to a tributary relationship with the Mongol Yuan dynasty. Royal marriages linked the Korean court with Mongol leadership. Political autonomy remained, but under supervision. This arrangement required adaptation. Imagine court attire gradually incorporating Mongol elements, hairstyles shifting subtly, diplomatic missions traveling between courts, cultural exchange mingling with political necessity. It was not total collapse. It was transformation under pressure. The Mongol presence influenced military organization, trade routes, and administrative practices. Some elites found new opportunities through alliance. Others quietly resented foreign oversight. For ordinary villagers, however, the experience was more practical. Taxes adjusted to meet tribute demands. Labor requirements shifted. Roads were repaired to accommodate movement of goods and officials. And over time, the immediate threat softened. The Mongol Empire itself fragmented. The Yuan dynasty weakened. By the late 14th century, Goryeo regained greater autonomy before eventually giving way to the Joseon dynasty. Resilience is rarely loud. It is seen in rebuilt homes, in replanted paddies, in kilns relit after seasons of silence. The Mongol invasions altered Korea's political landscape, but they did not erase its culture. Instead, they layered it, adding new influences while preserving deep-rooted traditions. As the echoes of hooves fade into the distance, we shift now from the clash of empire to something quieter. From armies crossing mountains, to objects resting undisturbed beneath the sea. The sound of hooves fades. The winds of invasion settle into memory. And now, instead of looking across land, we look down, through calm, shifting water. Off the southern and western coasts of the Korean peninsula, beneath layers of silt and tide, lie the remains of medieval ships. Wooden hulls long softened by salt water. Cargo holds undisturbed for centuries. Inside those holds, stacked carefully as they once were on the day of departure, are Celadon bowls, incense burners, ewers shaped like gourds, dishes glazed in soft green. They were meant to travel across the sea, perhaps toward China, perhaps toward Japan. They never arrived. Imagine the ship. A broad wooden vessel, creaking gently as it leaves port. Sailcloth stretched tight against coastal wind. Crew members adjusting ropes with practiced hands. Cargo secured below deck, each ceramic wrapped in straw, layered carefully to survive the journey. The sea at first is patient, but medieval maritime travel is never entirely predictable. A sudden storm, a hidden reef, a misjudged current. The hull strikes something unseen. Water enters slowly, then faster. Orders are shouted. Buckets pass from hand to hand. And then gradually the ship tilts. The cargo shifts. The ocean claims what was meant for distant markets. For centuries, no one knows exactly where these ships rest. Fishermen drag nets and occasionally snag something hard and smooth. A bowl rises unexpectedly from the depths, still glossy, still luminous despite years in darkness. In the 20th century, systematic underwater archaeology begins to reveal these lost cargoes. Divers descend into green light. Visibility is limited. Sediment clouds with every movement. And then, slowly emerging from silt, the shapes appear. Stacks of Celadon vessels still arranged as they were packed. Not scattered randomly, but preserved in order. The sea, in its quiet way, has protected them. Archaeologists document each piece carefully. The arrangement of cargo reveals trade patterns. The style of glaze indicates workshop origins. Inscriptions sometimes hint at destinations or ownership. These discoveries transform understanding of Goryeo maritime trade. Celadon was not merely local craft. It was a significant export commodity, valued across East Asia for its subtle color and refined form. Imagine lifting a bowl from seabed mud. The glaze, though dulled by time, still carries its soft jade tone. The surface remains smooth beneath fingertips. The shape perfectly balanced. It is as if the potter's hands have just released it. The shipwrecks tell quiet stories of risk and ambition. They speak of merchants willing to trust wind and tide. They reveal economic networks stretching beyond political borders. They also remind us of fragility. A single storm could erase months of labor. A single miscalculation could send wealth to the ocean floor. And yet, from loss comes preservation. On land, ceramics break. They chip, they shatter, they are discarded. Underwater, undisturbed, they endure. Museums now display these recovered vessels under soft lighting. Visitors walk slowly past them, reading placards that describe depth, location, and estimated date. But the true wonder lies not only in the objects themselves. It lies in the connection. The potter shaping clay in a smoky kiln. The merchant counting cargo. The sailor adjusting sail. The storm gathering without warning. The diver centuries later brushing aside silt. A chain of quiet human intention, linked across time. These shipwreck ceramics are not dramatic discoveries of treasure chests overflowing with gold. They are subtler. Rows of bowls. Carefully shaped bottles. Everyday objects elevated by context. They reveal how far Goryeo craft traveled. They demonstrate technical consistency across workshops. They show the scale of production required to fill entire cargo holds. And they invite us to imagine journeys interrupted. As we rise slowly from the ocean floor, leaving the submerged cargo in its dim green light, we turn our attention inland once more. From trade beneath the waves, to the rituals that shape daily thought and belief. From the quiet darkness beneath the sea, we return to dry land. Away from drifting sediment and silent shipwrecks, we step into courtyards swept clean at dawn. Into wooden halls where incense curls slowly toward lacquered beams. Into homes where ancestors are not distant memories, but daily presences. To understand life in Goryeo Korea, you must understand ritual. Not dramatic ritual. Not spectacle, but repetition. Measured bows. Carefully arranged food offerings. Words spoken in steady cadence. The rhythm of reverence that shaped both elite and ordinary lives. Imagine yourself inside a modest household. The floor is wooden, polished by generations of feet. A low table stands at the center of the room. On the wall hangs a simple ancestral tablet, inscribed with a name written in elegant calligraphy. You rise early, before rice is prepared, before tools are lifted, before kiln fires are lit. You wash your hands carefully. You straighten your clothing. You step toward the ancestral tablet and bow, once, twice, slowly, deliberately. This is not theatrical. It is not hurried. It is routine. Confucian thought, introduced from China centuries earlier, had become deeply rooted in Korean society. It emphasized hierarchy, filial piety, moral discipline, and social harmony. It taught that order in the family mirrored order in the state. If you honored your parents, you honored your ruler. If you maintained ritual propriety at home, you strengthened the entire social fabric. Imagine the annual ancestral rites, known as jesa. Family members gather. The eldest male presides. Dishes are placed in precise arrangement. Rice, meat, fish, fruit. Placement matters. Direction matters. Sequence matters. Candles flicker gently. The room grows quiet. Bows are performed in slow unison. Wine is poured and lifted toward the tablet. Words are spoken in formal language that few fully understand, yet everyone respects. It is a performance of memory. Through ritual, the dead remain woven into the present. For a potter like you, even kiln firings might carry ritual undertones. Certain days are considered more auspicious. Certain actions require mental discipline. Craft itself becomes an extension of moral order, careful, restrained, balanced. Confucianism did not eliminate other belief systems. Rather, it layered itself upon older traditions. Buddhist temples still stood across hillsides. Monks still copied sutras in dim rooms scented with ink and paper. Bells still rang at dawn. And beneath both systems, indigenous beliefs persisted. Mountain spirits, village guardian deities, household gods. Imagine a small village shrine at the edge of rice fields. A simple structure. Rough wood. Offerings left quietly, a bowl of grain, a folded piece of cloth. Before planting season begins, villagers gather to pray for favorable weather. Not with frenzy, but with calm expectancy. Life depends on invisible forces. Rain must fall at the right time. Frost must not come too soon. Illness must not spread. The spiritual world is not distant. It is woven into daily tasks. When a child falls ill, herbal remedies are prepared. Prayers are whispered. A monk may be consulted. A local shaman may be quietly invited to perform a cleansing ritual, especially in rural areas where older traditions remain strong. These systems coexist, sometimes uneasily, sometimes seamlessly. Confucianism shapes official conduct. Buddhism shapes philosophical reflection. Folk belief shapes intimate fear and hope. For the Yangban elite, Confucian study is both moral duty and pathway to status. Young men memorize classical texts, recite passages, practice calligraphy until wrists ache. Examinations test not only knowledge but composure. Success grants entry into officialdom. Failure means returning home, perhaps to pottery workshops or farmland. Ritual discipline trains the mind. And discipline, in Confucian thought, is the foundation of a stable society. Imagine village life in autumn. Harvest completed. Rice bundled and stored. Families gather for seasonal festivals. Lanterns glow softly. Stories are told. Songs are sung not loudly but steadily. Even celebration carries structure. Hierarchy determines seating order. Age determines speaking order. Respect flows downward and upward simultaneously. The rhythm of their lives is predictable. Predictability becomes comfort. Through ritual, uncertainty is softened. The Mongol invasions may shake the kingdom. Trade routes may shift. Hills may crack. But mourning bows continue. Seasonal offerings continue. Continuity sustains identity. If you were a potter shaping Celadon bowls, you might understand this instinctively. The glaze must settle evenly. The form must remain balanced. Too much haste creates imbalance. So too with society. Ritual slows life down. It provides shape to time. It offers a sense that even in hardship, there is order. As incense fades and ancestral tablets return to shadow, we gently widen our lens once more. Because ritual does not exist in isolation. It is supported by trade, by ships crossing seas, by merchants calculating value, by craftsmen responding to distant demand. From the stillness of ancestral halls and village shrines, we turn our attention outward. Beyond courtyards and kilns, beyond rice fields and ritual bows, there is the sea. You do not see it from your workshop every day, but you feel its presence in subtler ways, in the orders that arrive, in the shapes requested, in the standards expected. The sea is a quiet engine of demand. Imagine standing at a coastal port along the western shores of the Korean peninsula. The tide pulls gently against wooden docks. Ships rock softly in rhythm with the water, their hulls broad and sturdy. Sailcloth, folded neatly, waits for favorable winds. These vessels carry more than cargo. They carry ideas, expectations, reputation. During the Goryeo period, maritime trade linked Korea with Song and later Yuan China, and with Japan. Silk, books, medicines, metals, and ceramics crossed waters that could be calm for weeks and then suddenly unforgiving. As a potter, you may never board such a ship, but your work might. Imagine crates lined carefully with straw. Celadon bowls wrapped in cloth. Incense burners cushioned against impact. Each piece inspected, weighed, counted. A single crack could mean loss. A poorly fired glaze could mean embarrassment before foreign merchants. Reputation mattered. Chinese officials admired Goryeo Celadon for its luminous jade tone. Japanese elites sought Korean wares for tea rituals and refined gatherings. The subtle blue-green sheen of your glaze becomes a silent ambassador. But trade is never effortless. Ships must be provisioned. Crews must be paid. Navigation requires knowledge of currents, seasonal winds, and coastal landmarks. Pirates sometimes linger near straits. Storms form without warning. You imagine the voyage. Weeks at sea, salted fish rations, damp air that settles into clothing. Sailors repairing ropes by lantern light. Quiet songs hum to mark time. Trade depends on patience. Inland, caravans move goods from kiln sites to ports. Ox carts creak along dirt roads. Bridges must be maintained. River crossings must be negotiated. Merchants calculate risk carefully. Too much supply can flood a market. Too little can raise prices beyond reach. Taxes are levied at checkpoints. Officials record shipments meticulously. Gold and silver circulate, but rice often remains the standard measure of value. Wealth is counted not only in coin but in grain and land. Joint ventures form quietly among merchant families. Agreements are written on paper that binds them to shared risk. Trade expands opportunity but also inequality. Coastal towns grow busier. Warehouses rise near docks. Skilled workers find employment packing goods, repairing ships, maintaining sails. Meanwhile, inland villages remain slower, more insulated. The sea brings both prosperity and vulnerability. When Mongol forces gained influence over Korea, maritime routes were also used for military campaigns, including the attempted invasions of Japan. Ships that once carried ceramics and silk were requisitioned for war. The line between commerce and conflict could blur quickly. Still, trade continued. The desire for refined objects did not disappear. If anything, it intensified among elites seeking to display status through foreign luxuries. And so kilns continued to burn. Imagine a particularly large order from abroad. The pressure increases. Firings are scheduled back to back. Workers sleep in short intervals. Clay is kneaded again and again until smooth. A shipment delayed by cracked glaze means missed opportunity. The economy rests upon thousands of such quiet decisions. Taxation supports state administration. Trade revenue funds infrastructure. Roads improve. Ports expand. Officials oversee quality control. The Yangban elite often viewed merchants with ambivalence. Confucian ideology ranked merchants below scholars and farmers, seeing profit-seeking as less virtuous than cultivation or governance. Yet the state relied upon trade. This tension creates a subtle social paradox. Commerce fuels the kingdom, but moral philosophy remains cautious of it. In markets, you would see fabrics from China, metal goods, spices, medicinal herbs. You would hear accents from distant regions. You might glimpse foreign sailors studying unfamiliar scripts. Cultural exchange occurs not in dramatic bursts, but in gradual absorption. Ceramic styles evolve. Glaze experiments incorporate outside influence. Motifs shift subtly. The sea is a teacher, though it never speaks directly. As trade networks thicken, social distinctions sharpen. Because access to imported goods becomes a marker of status. Which leads us gently toward a deeper examination of hierarchy itself. If merchants move wealth, and scholars interpret law, and farmers grow rice, and potters fire vessels, where does each stand in the ordered structure of society? Now the rhythm shifts again. From docks and trade winds, from the movement of ships and goods, we return inland, to quiet courtyards framed by tiled roofs and carefully trimmed pines. Here hierarchy is not shouted. It is lived. In Goryeo society, structure was not accidental. It was deliberate, codified, reinforced through ritual and education. At the top stood the aristocratic class, the Yangban, scholar officials whose authority rested not only on land and lineage, but on examination success and proximity to power. Imagine approaching one of their homes. Unlike the modest dwellings of craftsmen and farmers, the Yangban residence is expansive. Wooden beams are thick and polished. Roof lines curve gracefully. Papered doors slide open without sound. Courtyards are swept daily. You would not enter casually. Status determines posture, speech, even eye contact. The Yangban define themselves through learning. Confucian classics are copied by hand. Inkstones sit beside rolled scrolls. Hours are spent memorizing texts, debating moral philosophy, refining calligraphy. Scholarship is both vocation and identity. Examinations determine advancement. A young man of elite background studies from childhood, rising before dawn, reciting passages, practicing composition. Success brings office. Failure brings quiet shame. Merit and birth intertwine. Though examinations theoretically allow talent to rise, family connections often ease the path. Lineage matters. Marriage alliances strengthen position. Social mobility exists, but it is narrow and carefully guarded. Below the Yangban are the Chunjin, the middle people. Skilled professionals, interpreters, physicians, accountants, and technical specialists. They are respected for expertise, yet rarely fully admitted into aristocratic ranks. Below them are the Sangmin commoners. Farmers, artisans, merchants. The backbone of the economy. Their labor sustains the kingdom, yet their political voice remains limited. And at the bottom are the Chanmin, the lowborn. Slaves, entertainers, butchers, those assigned hereditary occupations considered impure. Hierarchy shapes every interaction. Clothing signals status immediately. The cut of a robe, the fabric, the color of a hat, even the width of sleeves, each communicates rank. Sumptuary laws regulate who may wear silk, who may use certain pigments, who may ride a horse in town. You feel this structure even as a potter. Your craft may be admired. Your bowl may sit upon a noble's table, but you do not dine beside him. Legal systems reinforce hierarchy. Punishments differ according to class. Testimony carries different weight depending on status. In disputes, rank can tilt outcomes subtly, sometimes decisively. Governance flows from the top. The king relies upon scholar officials to administer provinces. They collect taxes, supervise local affairs, oversee education. Reports travel slowly by courier, carried across roads and rivers. Authority is calm, methodical. Village elders mediate smaller disputes. Ritual observance reinforces obedience. Ancestral rites remind families of lineage continuity and of their place within a broader order. Education becomes both ladder and barrier. A talented commoner might dream of examination success, but the cost of preparation, tutors, books, leisure time, often limits opportunity. Thus, hierarchy perpetuates itself gently. Not through constant force, but through expectation. Children learn early how to bow, how to address elders, how to step aside for someone of higher rank. These gestures become automatic, almost invisible. The system provides stability. Roles are defined. Responsibilities are clear. Chaos is minimized. For many, predictability offers security. Yet beneath calm surfaces, tension can exist. Heavy taxation, crop failure, regional unrest. These pressures occasionally strain the structure. Reforms are proposed. Resistance emerges quietly. Still, the framework endures for centuries. From the vantage point of a kiln worker, the Yangban world feels distant. You hear of official decrees. You see tax collectors. You know which symbols represent authority. But your days remain shaped by clay and fire. And yet, the bowls you create may travel upward. They may rest upon low lacquered tables in aristocratic homes. They may hold rice at ceremonial feasts. They may reflect candlelight in elite gatherings. And so, slowly, gently, we move toward the final contrast. If you have felt the heat of the kiln, the fatigue of repetition, the rigid ladder of society, what does life look like at its very summit? Now we ascend to the highest terraces of power. To Gyeong, the capital of the Goryeo Dynasty, a city of palaces, administrative halls, and ceremonial courtyards carefully aligned with geomantic principles. Here, architecture is not merely functional. It is symbolic. You approach through wide gates painted in restrained reds and greens. The air smells faintly of pine smoke and polished wood. Gravel crunches softly underfoot. Inside the palace complex, symmetry governs everything. Low-tiled roofs sweep outward like wings. Pillars rise in orderly rows. Courtyards open into one another in measured sequence. Nothing feels rushed. Nothing feels accidental. Tonight, a banquet is being prepared. Not loud, not chaotic, but deliberate. Servants move with controlled precision. Silk sleeves whisper against lacquered trays. Lanterns are trimmed. Candles are positioned to cast gentle, flattering light. Imagine the table settings. Celadon bowls, perhaps like the ones you once shaped, are arranged carefully. Their pale green glaze catches the flicker of flame. Bronze chopsticks rest upon carved holders. Rice wine is poured into small cups of thin porcelain. Each object has weight, meaning, history. The king does not enter dramatically. He is already present in the room before many notice him. Seated slightly elevated, posture upright, expression composed. His robes are layered silk, embroidered with subtle patterns, dragons or clouds stitched in gold thread. The fabric glimmers quietly. Around him sit officials, high-ranking nobles, scholars who have passed the examinations with distinction. Conversation is measured. Topics revolve around governance, poetry, agricultural reports, tributary missions from neighboring states. Voices remain low. Laughter, when it comes, is soft and brief. Music begins. Court musicians sit cross-legged along the side of the hall. The sounds are gentle, zither plucked with careful fingers, bamboo flutes releasing slow, sustained notes. Drums beat softly, almost like a distant heartbeat. The rhythm of elite life is not hurried. Courses are presented in sequence. Steamed fish delicately seasoned. Rice molded into precise shapes. Seasonal vegetables arranged with aesthetic attention. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is excessive in appearance, though wealth quietly underwrites everything. Servants kneel when pouring. Eyes lower. Movements are practiced from youth. Beyond the main hall, secondary courtyards host additional guests. Lower-ranking officials who share proximity but not full intimacy with the ruler. Hierarchy even within luxury. Yet compared to the kiln yard, the difference is profound. Here hands are unscarred by clay. Faces are shaded from sun. Fingertips are stained with ink, not ash. The temperature is controlled. The air is fragrant. The floor is covered with woven mats that cushion each step. Ceremony extends beyond food. Poetry may be recited. A scholar rises, bows, and presents verses composed for the occasion, praising harmony, seasonal change, imperial virtue. Calligraphy scrolls are unfurled. Tea is served at the evening's close, its bitterness subtle, its warmth soothing. Outside, guards stand at attention. Beyond palace walls, markets close for the night. Somewhere in the distance, perhaps, a kiln cools in darkness. Luxury here is not wild indulgence. It is disciplined refinement, control, measured beauty. The elite experience time differently. While artisans count hours by kiln firings, rulers count seasons by harvest reports and diplomatic correspondence. Yet even here, fragility remains. Political alliances shift. External threats loom. Mongol influence has shaped this court in earlier decades. Tributary relationships require negotiation. The silk robe does not shield entirely from uncertainty. And still, in this moment, beneath the lantern glow, there is stillness. A bowl of Celadon reflects firelight. A king lifts a cup. Music hums softly through wooden beams. And the contrast is complete. From cracked glaze to polished jade. From kiln smoke to incense. From repetitive labor to choreographed ceremony. The arc of this world stretches from earth to palace ceiling, and each layer supports the other. And now, as the lanterns dim and servants quietly clear the last dishes, we drift toward our final reflection. If you imagine the entire journey now, it unfolds slowly. You began with clay under your fingernails, rising before dawn, tending fires, shaping vessels that might crack despite your care. You stood beside a kiln whose heat demanded patience. You watched ships carry pottery across seas. You felt the pressure of hierarchy, the quiet weight of Confucian expectation. You entered banquet halls where your work shimmered in candlelight. The world of Goryeo was layered, hardship below, refinement above. Yet neither existed alone. The potter depended on trade. The scholar depended on farmers. The king depended on administrators. The glaze depended on fire. And just as a thin layer of Celadon could fracture if temperature shifted too quickly, so too could societies if balance was lost. Yet for centuries this balance endured. Fragile in detail. Resilient in structure. As you rest now, perhaps consider the quiet continuity of human effort. Hands shaping clay, minds shaping law, communities shaping belief. Across oceans and centuries, people have lived within rhythms of labor and ceremony, monotony and meaning. The kilns of Goryeo have long cooled. The palace lanterns no longer burn. But the bowls remain, in museums and shipwrecks in the earth, carrying within their glaze the memory of steady hands and careful fire. And here, in the quiet of your present moment, There is comfort in knowing that hardship passed, cultures endured, and even fragile things can outlast empires. Let your thoughts settle gently, like ash falling after flame, like glaze cooling into stillness, and drift slowly into rest.